single tear, every hurtful action, the message is clear. Everything that calls for love, call for love and call. Everything is a call for love, call for love and call. Every word in anger, every single tear, every hurtful action, the message is clear.
Beautiful reminder from A Course in Miracles of how to navigate more gracefully through another day on planet Earth.
Everything is a call for love, call for love and call. Everything is a call for love, call for love and call. Every word in anger, every single tear, every hurtful action, the message is clear. Everything is a call for love.
Okay, so I do just invite you to breathe with me now. Just relax, a mindful breath as we jump into this beautiful day and bring ourselves into alignment with the divine presence within us. And that divine presence within each person here today as we speak our mission statement together as CSL. We recognize and realize the omnipresence of divine love as the truth of all. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. I will make a quiet
And in this silence, in this stillness, I invite you to join with me as I align with that essence, that one power and that one presence that is the totality of all. And in this place, I recognize that this is my essence, that I am a complete, whole, perfect individualization of that one power and that one presence. And as this is the truth for me, this is the truth for each and every one, for each living being, is an expression of the divine in form. And as I consciously align myself with this truth, knowing that the attributes of the divine are mine, I affirm for each of us that we live boldly and consciously from this place of all-knowing, this place of wisdom, of beauty, this place of peace and joy and laughter. That as we know ourselves as the divine in form, we look through the eyes of God and we see each other as the divine that they are. And from this place, we see each person with compassion, with empathy, with love, knowing that they too are a complete pattern of the divine, that we are all on the path together. And in faith and in trust and this essence of beingness, we release all fears, anxiety, confusion, chaos, knowing that we are guided and directed in this perfect pattern, that the divine is present in each moment, in each activity, in each breath, in each situation, that we express the fullness of life in every area of our lives, that we are always available, that the divine is always available, and we co-create in this extension that life that works for all. So in gratitude for this knowing, I turn my attention to the prayer chest and the secret desires of your heart, knowing that Spirit, the divine, is right in the midst of each situation, already active, already in the fullness of life, guiding and directing the outcome for the highest and the best of each situation. I know that peace, love, harmony, health, and wisdom is being revealed, and the truth is right there, being made manifest, that the healing is at hand. And I affirm that all is well. And I give thanks for this gathering today, knowing that we are all blessed by the presence of each other, and especially by the music and the message and the volunteers and all that make this occasion perfect. For this opportunity to increase our awareness of our divinity and our expression of this in the world. So giving thanks for this truth, knowing that we are all part of that fullness of life, I just release these words into the law, knowing it is already so. It is already done, as we have affirmed, as we join together and declare, and so it is.
Get ready, my soul. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of life. Get ready, my soul. 'Cause here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Get ready, my soul.
Good morning. I'd like to call your attention to the prayer chest at the bottom of the stairs to the left. If for some reason you have some clouds covering up your enthusiasm for life, something is bothering you, worrying you, you like a little bit more mojo in your life, please leave your concerns in the prayer chest, and the practitioner will do affirmative prayer on your behalf this week. And my quotes for today, one you've already seen on the love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. From the Dalai Lama. And from Albert Schweitzer, until he extends the circle of his compassion to all living things, man will not himself find peace. And one more from Queen Elizabeth. Let us not take ourselves too seriously. None of us has a monopoly on wisdom.
Good one, Lou. Thank you so much. Okay, so here we are in September, and our theme for the whole year is abundant living. And so we've broken that up into different ideas for each month, and in September we are studying abundant compassion. And I say studying because my mom's voice keeps coming into my mind. She always says, we're a teaching order, not a preaching order. And I find that to be so true. What we want to do is teach spiritual principles according to new thought or metaphysics. And so we try to be practical. We try to offer a practical spirituality so that you can practice it actually and have it work in your life. And I'm just such a firm believer of this philosophy because I have put it to practice in my life, and like I don't even recognize who I am now compared to who I was before. It works, and so it's a passion for me to share that as well. And what I find is this philosophy is everywhere. It's a lot of places. I think I even opened up like a city market ad one time. It had all these recipes in it, and it had like mindfulness on it and namaste. And I'm like, you didn't used to see that. That used to be woo, not so woo anymore. So today I would like to talk about compassion and boundaries. And so today's talk will be very practical about compassion. And sometimes I realize that when we talk about compassion, we sing, it's nice, it's beautiful to think about. Jesus's words, love your neighbor, all of those things. Well, I found somebody that brought it down where the rubber meets the road, and so I'm going to share some of her work. So today we'll hear some ideas that will make sense to our analytical mind. Anyone have an analytical mind working all the time? Yeah. So, and to your psychological self, our reasoning mind sometimes needs to hear these things in order for them to sink from our mind down to our heart and then make a difference. So today I am studying some work from Brené Brown, who is familiar with Brené Brown. Yeah. Isn't she awesome? I just can't get enough of listening to her and watching her beautifulness, whatever, however you say that. So she is a research professor at the University of Houston. She's been studying and collecting data. I love that she collects data about courage, shame, vulnerability, and empathy. And she's been doing that for the past 2 decades. She has written 6 #1 New York Times bestsellers. She has a few TED Talks that are amazing and fabulous. And I highly recommend that you check out those YouTube. What I love about Brené Brown is she's like a researcher, a scientist, and she did all this data, and she just did the data, improved science of mind is what she's done. And everything she talks about is what we teach here, and I love the way she came about that. So I found all of them to be relevant to creating a fulfilling life in a very practical way. Her data and scientific research reinforces for me what we teach here, and she shares it in such a usable way. So first off, I have a small 5-minute clip of Brené Brown, and she's in an interview with someone else, but the camera's just on her. You'll hear the interviewer speaking a little bit. And then we're going to break that down. So don't think you have to learn everything in the 5 minutes. She talks about a lot of things. This is what the thing is today. We're going to talk about what she's talking about, compassion and boundaries. So go ahead, Jeff. Thanks.
One of the most shocking findings of my work was the idea that the most compassionate people I had interviewed over the last 13 years were also the absolutely most boundary. Because so I'll give you a very definition of the definition of boundary that I use in the book. Boundary is simply what's okay and what's not okay. What I think we do is we don't set boundaries. We let people do things that are not okay, or get away with behaviors that are not okay, then we're just resentful and hateful. Me, I'd rather be loving and generous and very straightforward with what's okay and what's not okay. And I learned from the research. I was the exact opposite. I assumed for the first 35 years of my life that people were sucking on purpose just to piss me off. That's what I assumed. Whether it was someone who worked for me or it was someone family member who was constantly who was always critical and judgy. And I was like, why are they choosing these things? Why are they making their choices? They should know better. And then when this thing came up from my therapist, what if people are doing the best they can? I thought, my husband had the most beautiful answer to that question. He said, I never know whether people are doing the best they can or not. But when I assume people are, it makes my life better. So now I think I am not as sweet as I used to be, but I'm far more loving.
It's not just some like technique so that you can do that. That's really like a way of being to like nurture that soil of wholeheartedness.
Yeah. Generosity, to assume the best about people, is almost an inherently selfish act. Because the life you change first is your own. Yeah. And so my question is big, B-I-G. What boundaries need to be in place for me to stay in my integrity and make the most generous assumptions about you? But generosity can't exist without boundaries, and we are not comfortable setting boundaries. Because we hear more about what people will think, and we don't want to disappoint anyone, we want everyone to like us, and boundaries are not easy. But I think they're the key to self-love, and I think they're the key to treating others with love and kindness. Sustaining. Nothing is sustainable without boundaries. I think compassion and empathy are different things, and again, I'm relying on my data for this. I think compassion is a deeply held belief that we're inextricably connected to each other by something rooted in love and goodness. I call that God. Not everybody calls that God. My dad would call it fishing. Fishing?
Fishing?
No, there's no G in fishing. But I think compassion is a deeply held belief. I think empathy is the skill set to bring compassion alive. So empathy is something we can teach. I mean, it's something we've taught our kids since they were very little. It's about how to communicate that deep love for people in a way so that people don't know they're not alone. I think there's a lot of new and interesting information out there about empathy not being a good thing, about that, there's an argument that says, if Travis is in struggle and I practice empathy with you, I'm taking on your darkness, and it leads to burnout, but empathy is not feeling for somebody. It's feeling with them. It's touching a place in me that knows where you've been, so I can look at you and say, me too, brother. You're not alone in this. And I find empathy to be infinite. I think it gives back tenfold what you put out.
It's sustaining. Like if
It's
if
sustaining.
you've done the work and you have your boundaries, I mean, you could tread that water forever and never get tired.
Okay, so empathy. I'm quoting Travis here, empathy. If you've done your work and set your boundaries, you can tread that water forever. Amen. It's not finite. And it keeps giving back to us. And so this idea but here we go back to where we started this conversation. Empathy minus boundaries is not empathy. Compassion minus boundaries is not genuine. Vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability. So you see that there's a huge rift here, which is boundaries are freaking important. And they're not fake walls. They're not separation. Boundaries are not division. They're respect. Here's what's okay for me and here's what's not.
All right, isn't she cute? I love her. So, and I realized that might have been a lot and kind of hard to hear when you get a chance. Lights up there. Thanks, Jeffrey. The first thing she said was, the most compassionate people are the most boundaried people. That's what her data showed her. Out of all of the study of compassion, these people that were the most compassionate had the strongest boundaries for themselves. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit. She was asked by her therapist, what if everyone is doing the best they can? That's a great question to ask yourself, right? And her husband said, I'll never know if they are, but when I assume they are, it makes my life better. Remember, we studied one time assuming rapport with people. And I know, don't come to me and talk about Don Miguel Ruiz, because I know, make no assumptions. That's awesome work. But we do make assumptions. So if we're making assumptions, make the best assumption. Make the assumption of the wholeness of the other person, and your life will get better. You're not going to change the other person, you're going to change you. I love that. She used the idea of practicing big. So I wrote this out for us. Woo! Okay, so big. What boundaries need to be in place for me to stay in my integrity and make the most generous assumptions about you? She thinks that's how you get to become a compassionate person. That is true, authentic compassion. Not just being nice to other people, not just saying nice things because you think you should say nice things, okay? Boundaries, sometimes we're going to find out, are difficult for us. Maybe they're not nice things. We need to take care of ourselves and our own integrity. And when we let that slide, we begin to be resentful. And nobody can be compassionate when you're in resentment. Do you think that's true? Yeah. She says generosity can't exist without boundaries. And we aren't comfortable setting boundaries because we care more about what others think. Or we don't want to disappoint anyone. Or we just want people to like us. Does anybody do that but me? Yeah. So boundaries aren't easy, but she thinks that they are the key to self-love and treating others with kindness. I'll quote her, boundaries are freaking important, right? Yeah. So I found some other work, so I went on the internet, like I like to do, and I'm looking up, okay, let's check out this boundaries and compassion thing. And I came up with some work by Haley McGee. Awesome, Haley, thank you for this. This is entitled, How to Set Difficult Boundaries in a Compassionate Way. So here's the practical part, right? I'm reading her work here, okay, because I want to get it right. I don't want to paraphrase, so I'm going to read her work. In my experience, most boundaries can be divided into two distinct categories: shield boundaries and sandbox boundaries. Sometimes boundaries are like shields, moments of verbal defense, self-defense, that protect us from others' unwanted behavior. Shield boundaries ward off unwanted physical touch, defend against others' anger or cruelty, or protect our time, our belongings, and material goods. She says shield boundaries might take the form of, don't touch me like that, or I'm sorry, but you can't borrow $20, or I can't volunteer at the phone bank next week. She said generally they're simple, short, and clear-cut variations on saying no, which we know a lot of us have trouble saying no, right? Some boundaries feel less like self-defense and more like letting go, detaching from old patterns, feelings, and relationships that no longer serve us. So she says, imagine a sandbox that is filled with various things belonging to various people. You reach down and pick up only the items that belong to you. You avoid picking up your mother's guilt, your partner's debt, your boss's anxiety, and your friend's insecurity. They are not yours to carry. Having healthy sandbox boundaries means that you only carry your stuff out of the sandbox, nobody else's. They distinguish your emotions and responsibilities from others' emotions, and responsibilities. When we set sandbox boundaries and break these patterns of overgiving, we literally rewrite the status quo. We let go of the roles we've played in our relationships for years or even decades. We may have become so accustomed to acting like others' caretakers or fixers or de facto therapists that letting go of these roles can bring a great deal of fear. We may wonder, will he still love me if I'm no longer willing to caretake? Or will she think I'm selfish if I ask for more attention? We might think, what will she like about me when I'm not fixing her problems? Or what if they don't care what I have to say? In order to set boundaries that allow our relationships to continue in new and healthy ways, we need to face these fears head on. In fact, these fears can be gateways to authentic and meaningful boundary setting. So she's going to talk about how to do that. And the next slide up. So she talks about radically transparent boundary setting. Yep. Radically transparent boundary setting gives you permission to honor your feelings in the moment, fear and all, and invites the boundary recipient invites them in instead of pushing them away. You don't have to pretend to be cold, stoic, or flawlessly confident in order to set a successful boundary. In fact, by acknowledging that boundary setting is unfamiliar or even scary, you can create a vulnerable container that invites the boundary receiver in for a meaningful, compassionate conversation. So she says it includes 3 key ingredients. Number 1, acknowledge your fear or discomfort around setting the boundary. So you actually acknowledge that to yourself first, of course, and then even to the other person. Express the why behind the boundary, because it keeps me in my integrity. And then you set a clear, direct boundary. So imagine, she says, for example, that you have a dear friend who regularly consults you to process her family drama. You're beginning to feel frustrated that your conversations revolve entirely around her, and you realize you are no longer willing to assume the role of her therapist. In this case, you might use the radical transparency approach like this. So this is an example. You might say, it's hard for me to say this, but I want to be honest with you. I feel upset that so many of our conversations revolve around your family trouble because it makes me feel less like a friend and more like a therapist. Can we practice making our conversations closer to 50-50? I love that work because it does invite the person in instead of criticizing or being harsh about setting. Do you see how you're setting a boundary very kindly and inviting the person to help you, to cooperate with you around that boundary instead of pushing them out or turning them off or away? Another example, she says, I know that in the past, I've offered advice and support around your family issues, but I'm trying to take a better care of myself now. So I can't continue to be the person you come to with your family problems. I need our friendship to be more balanced. You're asking the person for help for you to be able to create a more balanced life for yourself, inviting them in instead of pushing them away. Radically transparent boundary setting gives me permission to be fully authentic while helping my loved ones feel that they are considered as well. So, here's your disclaimer. Of course, this approach isn't appropriate for all scenarios, she recognizes. I use this method to set difficult boundaries with close friends, family, and partners. Individuals with whom I generally feel safe have a certain degree of emotional intimacy and have a vested interest in continuing our relationship. I don't use this approach when I'm setting boundaries with casual acquaintances, with folks who make me feel emotionally unsafe, or when I'm enforcing a previously established boundary that the recipient has ignored. Ultimately, we can't control how others respond to our boundaries. Even if we state them with the utmost compassion, the recipient may still feel hurt, insulted, or confused, and that's okay. If we avoid these critical conversations, we create conditions in which resentments, anger, and frustration seethe and boil over unaddressed, which is almost always more devastating to the relationship than the boundary conversation would have been. It is not only our right, but our responsibility to set healthy boundaries in our relationships with our loved ones. It's our responsibility. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's scary, it's our responsibility to communicate our needs and limitations in our relationships, because, put your ears on, if we don't, we leave others with the burden of mind reading our needs, a burden no person should have to bear. So that's the end of that article. So Brene Brown reminds us that we cannot show up authentically, loving and kind, if we are holding resentments, judgments, and resentments and judgments, even in our thoughts, even if they don't come out of our mouth, even if we're thinking those, we cannot be authentically loving and kind, okay? First, we clean up our own consciousness, our own belief system, our own individual consciousness, or our thought processes, by setting the boundaries we need to be in place for us to stay in our own integrity, to feel good about ourselves, and in turn make generous assumptions about others. So there's no doubt you're going to be able to make generous assumptions about others only if you feel good about yourself, right? It all starts here. I can be generous with my love and compassion for you because I'm genuinely loving and compassionate with myself. And we will get into, we have a couple more weeks on compassion, we will get into some self-compassion as well. So the question again, what if everybody really is doing the best they can? These are some things from Brene. Boundaries are not fake walls, separation, or division. They are respect. Here's what is okay for me, and here's what's not okay for me. If you've done your work and set your boundaries, you can tread this water forever. According to Brene Brown, compassion is a deeply held belief that we are connected to each other in a way that is impossible to separate by something deeply rooted in love. And then she says, so that's compassion. She says, empathy is the skill set to bring compassion alive. We can teach empathy by teaching people how to communicate that deep love for people in a way so people know that they aren't alone. Empathy is not feeling for someone, she says. It is feeling with someone. You aren't alone. We are all connected in love. Let's have a song.
Father to son, husband to wife, brother to brother, black man to white, living together, falling apart, looking for the common ground in every human heart. It all comes down to the two of us. Yeah, this is where we start. We are building the bridge, one small stone at a time, and with a lot of love and some help from above, from your heart to mine. Oh, do you see it? There's a land of justice, cities filled with pride, a mountain of hope just on the other side, across a river of indifference, a valley of despair. There's a tower of courage piercing through the air. I have a dream for our children. I wanna take them there. We are building the bridge, one small stone at a time, and with a lot of love and some help from above, from your heart to mine. As we seek out understanding, as we learn to forgive, when we open up our minds, when our words are true and kind, we are building the bridge, one small stone at a time, and with a lot of love, some help from above, and with your heart to mine. And as we seek out understanding, as we learn to forgive, we open up our minds, when our words are true and kind, we are building the bridge. Yes, we are. When we open up our minds, when our words are true and kind, we are building the bridge.
All right, your turn to sing.
God, you are every mountain. God, you are every ocean. God, you are every canyon, every inch of earth and sky. God, you are midnight. God, you are every moment, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. God, you are every sunrise. God, you are every moonglow. God, you are every star shine, every inch of earth and sky. God, you are every springtime. God, you are every snowfall. God, you are every season, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. 'Cause you are the very breath I breathe. And your perfect love created me. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you.
Okay, as the ushers come forth, this is our time to consciously participate in the spiritual practice of the law of circulation. So if you'll consciously take your gift in your hand and just know with me that this is a symbol of the abundance I have received. And as I have received, it goes forth, doing its work, knowing that in the release, it all goes forth, blessing this world, and comes back to me. And so our affirmation, I generously give and I generously receive.
I am the heart, I am the hands, I am the voice, the spirit on earth, and who I am, and all I do is a blessing to the world. You are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice, the spirit on earth, and who you are, and all you do is a blessing to the world. We are the heart, we are the hands, we are the voice, the spirit on earth, and who we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world. We are blessings to the world. We are blessings to the world.
And these gifts are blessed as they go forth, blessing our community, our world, and all sentient beings. And so it is.
Thank you so much, Lou. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so now we have claiming our good. So these are affirmations that we say out loud together. We claim these for ourselves, and they're all wrapped around compassion this month. I'll also say, if you want to take these things home, all the affirmations that we do today, and some announcements that we have, There's a blue, I don't know if they're blue or not. Are they blue? Blue papers over here on the handout table as well. So, okay, here we go. Reading them all together out loud, all the way down. Here we are. Compassion naturally flows from the heart of my inner being. I am committed to helping build a better world for everyone, including myself. I bring higher energy into the world through my acts of compassion and kindness. It's okay to make mistakes and forgive myself. And so it is.
I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I'm just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I'm just where I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I'm getting the blessings I can hear. My soul is welcome here. I'm in the right place at the right time. I'm just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I'm just where I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I'm getting the blessings I hear. My soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I'm getting the blessings I hear. My soul is welcome here. My soul is welcome here. My soul is welcome here.
It's our last affirmation together.